Happy Hour with Matthew Arnold.
And perhaps this will be familiar to you. A fiery horse with the speed of light, a cloud of dust, and a hearty hi-yo silver, the Lone Ranger. With his Indian companion Tonto, his faithful Indian companion Tonto, the daring and resourceful masked rider of the plains, led the fight for law and order in the early West. Return with us now to those thrilling days of yesteryear. The Lone Ranger rides again. Okay, I do not have that in front of me, and I bobbled a little bit, but the fact of the matter is it's in my head. It's stuck in my head. And not because I made any conscious effort to memorize it, but simply because I heard it again and again. Every day after school, for years during elementary school, I'd come home and I'd watch 2 episodes of The Lone Ranger on local TV back to back. What else? Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission: to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before. Okay, we all know that. But again, and I'll bet that there are millions more that can recite that even than the opening to The Lone Ranger, and for the same reason. I read an article a few years back that said that the typical adult American can call to mind and sing along with something like 2,000 popular songs. And again, songs that you didn't ever intend to memorize, but you've had that experience when a song comes on the radio. Maybe you haven't heard it in years, and yet you're able to sing along. Why? And the answer is repetition. I mentioned I'm 60 years old. There are people of my age. Richie will back me up on this, I'll bet you. And if you're in that age group, you're a tail end of the baby boom. Here's a commercial that you have not heard since the early 60s, when commercials like this were banned. But there's an excellent chance you'll be able to finish it in your head when I say, Winston tastes good like a... And Richie just went, cigarette should, and I heard him in the booth. Because we heard it a gazillion times. So what's my point? I'm kind of beating the dead horse here. The point is that repetition works. And I can recall, even back, because my mom and dad were in this fight back in the 60s and 70s when I was a kid in school. And the idea was put forth, that there was a push against rote memorization. Because people said, the children shouldn't be just like parrots who are just repeating what they've memorized without really apprehending it, without understanding. And, I would say that was a straw man argument then, and it still is. And especially when it comes to religion, because I know that argument was used in regard to the catechism, right? Because prior to that, it was very typical for kids in parochial schools to memorize the questions and answers of the Baltimore Catechism. They said, well, they're just, they're not really learning their faith. They're just like parrots. And that's not really true, because even just a cursory look at the curriculum from the good old days would reveal that the questions and answers of the Baltimore Catechism were age appropriate, and that each year, as the student progresses, he learns more questions and more answers that kind of fill in the blanks. You get the fundamental doctrines that you learn at first, and then they kind of fill in all those other questions. And I can speak from experience, because this is what we did with our own kids, and it has served them very, very well. My eldest son went to Catholic University, and he studied theology because it was required. And oftentimes, he was alone in being able to assert the actual doctrines of the church, because he had committed them to memory. He had learned them, as we used to say, by heart. And that's an important thing, especially in a world where, sometimes Catholic theology classes aren't necessarily all that faithful. And it's an awful lot harder to hoodwink somebody who has a good apprehension of their faith. And that's an argument also, for the traditional liturgy, because, it's a year-long cycle of epistles and gospels.